I still remember the man I used to be, eager, hopeful, the kind of man who would lean in the moment a woman showed interest, thinking that laughter meant connection, that good conversations were enough to build something real, and yet, almost every time, that warmth would quietly fade. The same girl who once lit up around me would slowly slip away, leaving behind confusion and silence. For years, I blamed myself. Then, I blamed them. But the truth wasn't in blame, it was in understanding. After years of experience, reflection, and deep study into the psychology of attraction, I finally began to see the patterns. And once I understood the cause, the solution became clear. If you've been with me for a while, you know what I always say. No problem can be solved without first facing it with clarity. And today, we're going to do just that. There are two core reasons why women lose interest, even when everything seems to be going right. And once you learn to see them, you'll never experience this confusion the same way again. If you're ready to grow into the kind of man who no longer fears silence, distance, or disconnection, like this video, subscribe to Stoic Station, and let's begin. Reason number 1. The relationship lacked emotional gravity. Most men think women lose interest because something went wrong. A mistake was made, a wrong word said, a moment misread. But more often the reason is quieter and far more dangerous. It's that nothing truly happened at all. No emotional spark, no depth, no charge in the air. Just a flat, predictable rhythm of safety, comfort, and routine. And while that might sound like stability to you, to her, it feels lifeless. Because attraction doesn't thrive in neutrality, it thrives in emotional contrast. It lives in the tension between what's known and what's still unfolding. Like a flame, it needs both oxygen and resistance to burn. Here's a truth many men never hear. A woman does not stay magnetically drawn to a man because he's always kind or stable or present. She stays because she feels something in his presence, something dynamic, layered, and alive. This is not about creating chaos or playing games. This is about emotional gravity, the silent pull of a man who makes her feel a range of sensations she cannot get elsewhere. That pull doesn't come from words. It comes from presence, from unpredictability, from contrast. She needs excitement, the thrill of not always knowing what's next, a spontaneous weekend trip, a shift in conversation she didn't expect, a quiet glance that says more than 1,000 words. She needs mystery, the sense that there's more to you than what's visible. Don't explain every emotion you feel. Don't overshare every plan. Let her wonder. Let her lean in, trying to figure you out. She needs challenge, not conflict for conflict's sake, but the subtle resistance of a man who doesn't agree with everything she says just to keep the peace. A man with a spine, with standards, with the strength to push back, not out of ego, but from grounded clarity. She needs intrigue, stories that reveal slowly and with purpose the deeper parts of you. Don't dump your past in a rush. Let your experiences unfold like a good book, chapter by chapter, detail by detail. She needs safety too. When she lets her guard down, don't flinch. Hold space. Be the steady force she can soften into without fear of judgment or control. Emotional safety isn't about being passive. It's about being still and solid when she opens. She needs distance sometimes. Moments when you disappear, not to punish her, but to live your life fully. When she feels your absence, it creates a vacuum. And in that space, she remembers what your presence truly felt like. And yes, she needs light tension, the push and pull of natural polarity. A disagreement handled with calm, unshakable strength doesn't create disconnection. It creates respect. A woman begins to disconnect when she stops feeling, when the emotional current dies, when your presence becomes predictable and your energy becomes one-dimensional. If you want to reawaken her interest, You don't need louder declarations or constant contact. You need to become a man who lives in full emotional color, a man who feels deeply, moves with purpose, and isn't afraid to let his life carry a little edge, a little mystery, a little fire. Not to impress her, but because that's who you are. And when you become that man, her attraction returns not out of memory, but out of magnetism. Reason number 2, you valued her more than you valued yourself. Attraction doesn't begin with words. It begins in energy, the silent current that flows between two people. And when that current shifts, when it starts to feel one-sided, something vital begins to break. A woman can sense it almost immediately. The moment your energy says, "I need you more than you need me," even if she once felt deeply drawn to you, she begins to pull away. You may have thought that expressing how much she means to you would bring you closer. You may have believed that telling her, "I can't live without you," was a gesture of love, of honesty, of devotion. But to her, those words often carry a different meaning. Not strength, but instability. Not romance, but neediness. They quietly reveal that your emotional foundation doesn't live within you, it lives in her. And no woman wants to become the anchor for a man's sense of self. She doesn't want to feel responsible for holding him together. She wants to be inspired by his wholeness, not burdened by the weight of being his only source of fulfillment. This doesn't mean you should be cold or distant or detached. It means you must remain rooted in your own worth, because the moment you hand it over to her, she stops feeling the pull of your presence. Attraction dies not because you lacked value, but because you stopped owning it. She didn't lose interest because you weren't good enough. She lost interest because, somewhere along the way, you made her the prize and forgot that you were one too. When a man reclaims that truth, everything begins to shift. Not just in how she sees him, but in how he sees himself. When you place her above yourself, when your sense of worth begins to revolve around her attention, you unknowingly set the stage for imbalance. And that imbalance plays out differently depending on where you are in the connection. Sometimes it happens right at the beginning, when you've just met, and the urge to impress makes you overextend. Other times it shows up later, after chemistry has already formed, but your growing attachment begins to outweigh hers. Either way, the result is the same. She feels the shift, and she pulls away. To respond with strength and clarity, you first need to understand which scenario you're in, because the way you lead from here will determine whether that spark reignites or fades out completely. Scenario 1. You've only met her once or twice. In the earliest stage of connection, everything is still undefined, raw, unshaped, full of possibility. You've only met her once or twice. The energy is fresh, and neither of you fully knows what's unfolding yet. It's a delicate balance between presence and patience, initiative and restraint. Yes, you should take the lead. You're the one initiating movement, breaking the silence, opening the door. That's your role in the beginning. Not to chase, but to create space where something can begin. Maybe she's reserved. Maybe she's unsure. Starting a conversation, commenting on something she shares, showing light-hearted interest. These are natural steps, but they're only steps, not a sprint. What separates the men she forgets from the men she remembers is not effort, it's energy. And in this stage, the most powerful energy you can embody is calm, composed confidence. Not urgency, not overexposure, but a quiet certainty that doesn't beg to be seen. If she doesn't respond to a message or fades into silence, let her. Don't try to force clarity from confusion. Let her silence speak. It will tell you more than her words ever could. The truth is, most women are flooded with attention. Compliments, texts, invitations. They're surrounded by noise. So what cuts through that noise isn't louder volume. It's stillness. It's grounded presence. It's a man who isn't trying to prove himself in the first two interactions because he knows that his value doesn't live in performance. It lives in who he is. You don't need to convince her of your worth. You simply need to carry it and let her decide whether she's ready to meet you where you already stand. Scenario 2. She was interested, then started pulling away. This is where the real test begins. You had a connection. The conversations were alive, the energy was mutual, and for a moment, it felt like something real was building between you. She laughed at your jokes, leaned in when you spoke, responded with warmth. You felt seen, and she made you believe she felt something too. Then the shift happened. Subtle at first, then obvious. Her messages got shorter. Her enthusiasm faded. The warmth turned to silence. And now, the same woman who once couldn't wait to talk to you seems like she's slipping further away with each passing day. This is the exact point where most men panic. They overcompensate. They reach out too often, speak too much, give too freely, hoping to reignite what once felt effortless. But desperation never brings her back. It only confirms her drift. But you won't go down that path, not this time, because you know that her pulling away is not a command to chase. It's a call to realign, not with her, but with yourself. What happens next will define who you become. And if you want to re-attract her without sacrificing your power, there are 7 core principles you must follow, not to win her back, but to return to the kind of man she was drawn to in the first place. 1. Do not overcommunicate. When a woman begins to pull away, the instinct to fill the silence can feel overwhelming. You sense the distance, and your mind races to close the gap through texts, calls, check-ins, explanations. It feels urgent, like if you say the right thing or reach out at the right moment, you might bring her back to where things once were. But more words won't solve an emotional disconnection. In fact, they often make it worse. Overcommunication doesn't show her how much you care. It shows her how unsettled you feel. It reveals the fear underneath your actions. And nothing kills attraction faster than energy that screams, "I'm afraid of losing you." The truth is, connection isn't repaired through pressure. It's revived through presence. If she starts to retreat, don't chase her shadow. Match her pace. If she takes a step back, you take 2. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Let the silence speak for you. Let her feel the contrast between your absence and the emotional weight it once carried. When you stop reaching, you give her space to wonder. And in that wondering, you reclaim your position, not as the man who begged for her attention, but as the man she now has to work to understand again. 2. Don't confess your feelings. When she starts to drift away, it's natural to feel a surge of emotion rising in your chest. You want to reach for words, to explain, to clarify, to let her know how much she means to you. You believe that if she could just understand the depth of what you feel, maybe she'd come back. Maybe she'd realize what she's walking away from. But what you don't realize is that when a woman begins to emotionally withdraw, it's not because she hasn't heard how you feel. It's because she's sensed it already, perhaps too clearly. And when your first instinct is to confess your love, to pour out your heart in hopes that it might shift her perspective, what you're really doing is confirming something she already suspects, that you're more invested than she is, that the power dynamic has shifted. The more you explain your feelings in this phase, the more emotional leverage you give away. You may think you're opening up, being vulnerable, but to her, it feels like pressure. It doesn't invite closeness. It makes her feel responsible for emotions she no longer wants to carry. So hold your ground. Save your words. Let your silence and composure carry the message that matters most, that your love is not desperate and your value doesn't depend on being chosen. The man who doesn't rush to explain himself is often the one who lingers longest in her mind. 3. Never react with anger or bitterness. When she begins to pull away, when the warmth fades and silence takes its place, the urge to react can feel almost unbearable. You might feel betrayed, confused, or rejected. And in that emotional storm, the temptation to block her, send a final message, or ask, "Why are you doing this?" can feel like taking back control. But in truth, those reactions only hand her more power. When you lash out or let frustration spill into your words, what you're really showing is that she still holds emotional leverage over you, that her withdrawal has shaken your core. And while you may believe that expressing anger proves your strength, it often confirms what she needs to walk away without regret, the reassurance that she made the right choice. Anger doesn't re-establish dignity, it reveals your emotional instability. Bitterness doesn't reignite connection, it builds walls that will never be climbed again. So don't give her that story. Hold your frame. Stay composed, even if your heart is tense beneath the surface. The power lies in restraint, in allowing your calm to speak louder than your chaos. Let her feel the full weight of your silence, not as a punishment, but as a reflection of a man who refuses to be emotionally unraveled by someone else's indecision. That's where real strength lives, not in reaction, but in quiet self-possession. 4. Don't apologize without context. When a woman begins to pull away, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that you must have done something wrong. The silence, the distance, the unanswered messages, they create a sense of pressure, and many men instinctively try to relieve it by apologizing. Even when they can't quite pinpoint what they're apologizing for, they offer explanations, justifications, or reassurances, hoping that by doing so, they'll fix the discomfort and win her back. But an apology without clarity doesn't bring her closer. It simply signals that you're unsure of yourself. And when you apologize from a place of fear, not accountability, it doesn't read as humility, it reads as insecurity. She doesn't see a strong man owning his mistake. She sees someone who's trying to bargain for affection, to earn back connection by self-blame. If you did something genuinely wrong, take responsibility with strength. But if you're apologizing simply to soothe her withdrawal, you're sending a subtle message. Your approval is more important than my truth. And that dynamic erodes attraction. Stand in your truth. If you acted with integrity, don't apologize for your presence, your boundaries, or your decisions. A man who knows he did nothing wrong doesn't need to seek forgiveness. He simply moves forward with calm, with clarity, and with unwavering self-respect. 5. Don't force closure or clarity. One of the hardest things for a man to sit with is ambiguity, the silence, the mixed signals, the cold shift in energy that never comes with a clear explanation. It's tempting to want answers, to ask, "Just tell me if you're not interested." You think you're seeking clarity, but what you're really asking for is emotional relief. You want the discomfort to end, even if it means hearing something you don't want to hear. But here's the truth. Forcing closure doesn't bring you peace. It only exposes your need for control. And when you put her in the position to define your next step, you hand her the power that was always meant to be yours. Women don't lose interest because they don't have answers. They lose interest when mystery dies. When everything about you is laid bare, easily understood, easily predicted. Learn to live in the gray. It's where confidence matures and attraction lingers. Let her wonder where you stand. Let her feel the tension of your restraint instead of the desperation for her decision. Mystery is magnetic. It's not about playing games. It's about knowing that the man who doesn't rush to define everything is the one who stays in her mind long after the conversation ends. 6. Avoid buying her attention. When a woman begins to grow distant, many men try to close the emotional gap with gestures, lavish dinners, surprise gifts, spontaneous weekend plans. It comes from a sincere place, a hope that effort and generosity might reignite her interest. But what often goes unnoticed is the message beneath those offerings. Please notice me again. Please feel something for me. Gifts in this context don't feel generous, they feel transactional. And the more you give, the more it seems like you're trying to purchase what can't be bought, her desire. The moment your effort starts feeling like a bid for her attention, the dynamic shifts. Instead of admiration, she feels obligation. Instead of gratitude, she feels distance. Don't feed that imbalance. If she's pulling away, the most valuable thing you can give isn't something that comes in a box or on a plate. It's your absence. Pull your energy back. Reinvest it in yourself. Let your focus shift from impressing her to becoming a man so grounded and self-contained that her silence doesn't shake your worth. The man who doesn't try to buy her attention is often the one who commands it naturally. 7. Don't doubt your worth. When a woman starts to pull away, it's easy to turn inward and start dissecting everything you are. Maybe I'm not attractive enough. Maybe I don't make enough money. Maybe I'm too old, too quiet, too much, or not enough. You start rewriting your identity based on someone else's withdrawal, and that's the most dangerous ground a man can walk on. But the fading of attraction is rarely about who you are at your core. It's about how you showed up. It's about behaviors, energy, and timing. And behaviors can evolve. Confidence can be rebuilt. Presence can be sharpened. But your intrinsic worth, that doesn't need to be earned, improved, or proven. It just needs to be remembered. The moment you allow her distance to rewrite your self-perception, you lose far more than a relationship. You lose the foundation you were meant to stand on. Don't spiral into stories that were never true. Don't build your self-image on her silence. Hold your ground, not to convince her, but to honor yourself. You are not measured by someone's decision to stay or go. You are measured by the way you stay rooted when they do. I've lived long enough and seen enough to know that attraction between a man and a woman is not just about timing or words or effort. It's about energy, and energy doesn't lie. Most men are taught to chase love by proving their worth, by being dependable, generous, expressive. But no one teaches us that overexpression, overinvestment, and overexposure can sometimes do more harm than good. What we've talked about here isn't just about re-attracting a woman, it's about reclaiming yourself. When she loses interest, most men spiral. They search for the one thing they said wrong, the moment they didn't text fast enough, the date that wasn't perfect. But the deeper truth is this: women don't walk away because you made a mistake. They walk away when they stop feeling your emotional gravity, when your presence becomes predictable, when your identity begins to orbit around them instead of standing tall on its own. She needs to feel something real when she's around you: mystery, tension, safety, distance, excitement. Not because you're trying to stir her emotions, but because those layers already exist within a man who lives fully and unapologetically. And when she senses that you need her more than you need your own grounding, the polarity shifts. What once drew her in now pushes her away. That's the harsh truth, but also the liberating one. So, what's the lesson in all of this? It's not to be manipulative. It's not to win her back with tactics. It's to become a man who no longer needs to be chosen in order to feel whole. Be the man who can sit in silence without panicking, who can handle uncertainty without begging for closure, who can let her go, not with bitterness, but with calm confidence, because he knows that if she was meant to stay, she would never have needed to be chased. This isn't about punishing her for pulling away. It's about respecting yourself enough not to collapse when someone else's interest fades. It's about living your life in such a grounded, vibrant, self-led way that even if she does return, it's not because you chased her, it's because she realized she lost a man who never lost himself. Let that be your focus. Not the outcome, not the woman, but the man you choose to become through it all. And that brings us to the end of today's journey, a deep dive into what truly causes a woman to lose interest, and more importantly, how a man can reclaim his center without chasing, without pleading, and without losing himself in the process. This isn't just about relationships. It's about the kind of man you become when everything around you feels uncertain. It's about learning to lead with presence, not pressure, with self-respect, not desperation. Because the moment you stop trying to be chosen and start choosing yourself, that's when everything changes. If today's message resonated with you and you're on a path of becoming stronger, calmer, and more self-possessed, then you're in the right place. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to Stoic Station, and join a community of men who are learning to rise, not by chasing love, but by standing in quiet power. Until next time, stay grounded, stay sharp, and never forget, your presence is your power.